Today, we're going to talk about a story of pure, shocking innovation, of fatal arrogance, and about an airplane so radical, so bizarre, it forced an entire air force to literally rewrite its rulebook. We're talking about the Lockheed P-38 Lightning. The Germans had a nickname for it, the fork-tailed devil. But you know what? Before it earned that name, it was considered an absolute joke. This is the story of how that joke became a killer.
Just let that sink in for a second. This one sentence, it captures one of the most catastrophic intelligence failures of the entire German war machine. When Luftwaffe pilots first saw the photos of this thing, this P-38, they actually laughed. A reconnaissance platform, a big, clumsy target. To them, this strange-looking twin-boom aircraft wasn't a threat at all. No, it was proof that the Americans just didn't get it. They didn't understand fighter design. Well, they were about to learn a very, very hard lesson.
So you have to ask, why were they so sure of themselves? Why look at this completely new design and just dismiss it out of hand? Well, the answer wasn't just arrogance, though there was plenty of that. It was baked into their doctrine. You see, the Germans had already written the book on twin-engine fighters, and in their minds, that final chapter was a complete and utter failure.
And this right here, this is the heart of it all. The Zerstörer or destroyer doctrine. It wasn't just a theory. It was based on their own painful experience with the Messerschmitt Bf-110. Now that plane was supposed to be a heavy fighter, a bomber killer, but then the Battle of Britain happened, and the nimble little Spitfires and Hurricanes just tore them to shreds. So the lesson the Luftwaffe learned was simple, and it was absolute. 2 engines means you're vulnerable. End of story.
You can see their whole thought process laid out right here. They looked at the P-38, and remember, this thing was nearly twice as heavy as a P-51 Mustang, and they just projected their own failures right onto it. They saw 2 engines and immediately thought heavy. They saw its size and thought sluggish. In their minds, they were looking at a bigger, uglier Bf-110, which meant it was an even easier kill. Every single preconception they had was about to violently collide with reality at 20,000 feet.
All right, so let's jump into the cockpit and see what happens when this theory meets a very brutal reality. The date is November 1942. The place, the skies over Tunis, North Africa. This is where the textbook gets thrown right out the window.
Okay, so try to imagine you're Hauptmann Franz Schiss. You're a decorated ace, 19 victories to your name, and you're leading your squadron of Bf-109s. You spot these new American twin-engine fighters down below. So you do exactly what you're trained to do. Dive from above, get on their tail, and take out the clumsies or stores. But as you're screaming down, the impossible happens. They don't scatter, they don't try to run. No, they break hard into your attack and turn inside your dive. All of a sudden, Schiss isn't looking at the tail of a lumbering target. He's staring right down the nose of a P-38.
This, right here, this just nails the complete and total disconnect. Schiss was expecting a slow, lumbering target. What he got was a fighter that could outturn his own Messerschmitt. He expected an easy kill from the rear. Instead, he was facing an aircraft that could pull up into a vertical climb that would literally make his own plane stall out. And maybe the most terrifying part of all, he was expecting scattered fire from guns on the wings. Instead, he was staring into a buzzsaw of 4 50 cal machine guns and a 20mm cannon all packed into the nose, converging into a single point of absolute destruction.
Schiss actually survived that first encounter, but 3 of his pilots didn't. He would eventually become the Luftwaffe's top P-38 killer, but he never ever forgot that first lesson. This quote, from his own memoirs, it just says it all. This one fight sent a shockwave through the entire Luftwaffe, and it forced them to ask one simple, terrifying question.
I mean, that's the real question, isn't it? This wasn't just a bad guess. It was a complete and fundamental failure to even imagine that someone else might have solved a problem that they couldn't. To understand how, we got to rewind. We have to go back to the blueprint, way back before the first P-38 ever took to the sky. You see, the Germans were looking at the P-38 through the lens of their own history, their own failures. But the Americans? They weren't trying to build a better Bf-110. They were trying to build something that had never existed before, based on a list of requirements that, at the time, seemed completely impossible.
Just look at how fast this all happened. Back in 1937, the Army put out a call for what seemed like science fiction, a fighter that could hit 360 miles an hour at 20,000 feet. A young Lockheed engineer named Kelly Johnson didn't just meet that challenge, he absolutely shattered it. His prototype, the XP-38, hit an incredible 414 miles per hour. The brass was so blown away, they even let him try for a transcontinental speed record. And, well, the plane made it.
right up until it crashed on landing. But even in that failure, there was this incredible success. The central pod where the pilot sat was basically unharmed, proving just how safe the design was.
So how on earth did Johnson's team pull it off? This is where the genius really shines. Each one of these innovations was a direct answer to a problem that had crippled earlier twin-engine planes. The counter-rotating propellers? That got rid of the massive engine torque that made powerful fighters so hard to handle. The twin booms gave it incredible stability. The nose-mounted guns, well, we know what they did, and those turbo superchargers gave it the raw power to perform those impossible zoom climbs that left German pilots speechless. They weren't just building a plane, they were systematically solving a series of really complex physics problems.
Okay, so with this revolutionary aircraft now in the skies, German pilots had to go back to school, fast. They had to tear up the old playbook and write a brand new one from scratch, just to have a chance of survival.
This quote from another ace, Franz Stigler, it just says it all. You can feel the weight of experience in those words. That was suicide. That concentrated cone of fire coming from the P-38's nose was so unbelievably deadly that the #1 rule of engagement became, whatever you do, do not face this thing head-on.
So this is basically their new survival guide, and you can bet it was written in blood. Just look at the words here: avoid, escape, exploit. This isn't the language of a confident hunter anymore, is it? It's the language of someone desperately trying not to become the prey. Every single one of these rules is a direct reaction to one of the P-38's unique strengths. They couldn't climb with it, they couldn't face it, and their best bet was to take a quick shot and then dive away. They had to completely relearn how to fight in the air.
But the P-38's biggest impact wasn't just in dogfights. That twin-engine design gave it something no single-engine fighter at the time had: incredible range. And that led to its most famous, its most legendary mission, Operation Vengeance. American intelligence found out that Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the mastermind behind the Pearl Harbor attack, was going on an inspection tour. His flight path was going to take him hundreds of miles over open ocean. There was only one Allied fighter that could even dream of making that trip.
Just let that number sink in. 870 miles. 18 P-38s flew for nearly 2 hours, skimming just 50 feet above the waves to stay off radar, navigating by compass and clock. They arrived at the intercept point at the exact minute predicted and shot down Yamamoto's bomber. It was an assassination that changed the course of the war in the Pacific, and it was only possible because of the P-38's unique design.
And if you need any more proof of just how deadly this plane could be, here it is. America's top flying ace, the ace of aces, Richard Bong, scored all 40 of his victories flying the P-38. The second highest scoring ace, Thomas Maguire, he also flew only the P-38. These guys learned to master its strengths, that speed, that firepower, its sheer toughness, and they used it to completely dominate the skies, especially in the Pacific.
So what's the final verdict on the fork-tailed devil? Well, its story is a little more complex than just simple outright dominance. Its legacy is really one of having the right tool for the right job. And it's a powerful, powerful lesson in the value of innovation.
You know, the P-38 story isn't one of universal perfection, and this really shows why. In the Pacific, where you needed long range over these vast stretches of ocean, the P-38 was an undisputed king, no question. But in Europe, the fight was totally different. Those air battles were happening at much higher altitudes, way up above 25,000 feet. And up there, the P-38's Allison engines just couldn't keep up with the Merlin engine in the P-51 Mustang. So while it was an absolute game changer, it was eventually replaced in Europe by a plane that was better suited for that very specific environment.
But let's bring it back to the German perspective one last time. This is a quote from Johannes Steinhoff, a high-ranking German general and ace. Listen to his words carefully. He didn't say it was the most maneuverable or the fastest. He said it was the most dangerous. And why? Because of its versatility. Its incredible range meant it could pop up where you least expected it. Its toughness meant it could take a real beating and still get home on one engine. That combination of traits made it a uniquely terrifying threat.
When you boil it all down, the story of the P-38 is the ultimate proof that challenging assumptions is how you win. The Germans were trapped by their own conventional thinking, by their own past failures. Lockheed, on the other hand, embraced a radical design that solved old problems in completely new ways. And the success of the P-38? It directly influenced the twin-engine jet fighters that would dominate the post-war era, from the F-4 Phantom all the way to the F-15 Eagle.
And that really leaves us with this final thought. The Germans laughed at the P-38 because it looked strange and it violated all their rules. And they paid a very, very heavy price for that failure of imagination. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What revolutionary idea, what game-changing technology, what fork-tailed devil are we dismissing today simply because it doesn't fit our own preconceptions?